All right, welcome back everyone to another deep dive.
It's good to be back.
Today we're going to be talking about something a little different, but I think it's going to be really interesting. We got some fascinating source material from you guys about St. Catherine of Siena, but we're not just looking at her life, in a typical biographical sense. We're analyzing her through this lens of the Enneagram.
That's right.
And specifically as a type 3, the achiever.
Yes.
With a self-preservation twist.
Uh-huh.
Before we get too far, can you maybe give like a really quick overview of the Enneagram for people who might not be familiar with it?
Sure. So the Enneagram is a system of 9 interconnected personality types, and each of these 9 types has a core set of motivations, fears, strengths, and it can be a really insightful tool for understanding ourselves and the people around us.
So it's almost like a decoder ring for human behavior.
Exactly.
And in Catherine's case, I think it reveals some really fascinating things about her drive, her accomplishments, and even her, her deep humility.
Absolutely. And the sources you provided really highlight her incredible work ethic, her dedication to service and her laser focus on achieving tangible results, which are all, very classic hallmarks of a type 3 personality.
So, okay, help me picture this. Like, is this someone like, I don't know, like a Bill Gates or something who has billions but chooses to live relatively simply?
Yeah.
Is that the vibe we're getting here? Because the sources mention her simple lifestyle, even when she was like, rubbing elbows with these really powerful figures.
Yeah, and that's where the self-preservation subtype comes in, because it kind of challenges that stereotype that we have of the type 3 as being all about fame and recognition. Because her drive wasn't about external validation. It was about this deep inner need for security effectiveness and, doing what she felt was right.
Yeah.
Almost like a quiet, unwavering determination.
Okay, so it's less about like climbing the ladder and more about knowing you built a really, really solid foundation.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like an architect who designs a beautiful, functional building. Their primary motivation isn't necessarily winning awards or getting accolades. It's about creating something structurally sound and inherently valuable that serves a purpose for the people using it.
Oh.
And that's that self-preservation 3 energy in a nutshell.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together now. And speaking of purpose, the source mentions this wild story about Catherine urging the Pope to return to Rome from Avignon.
Right.
Talk about bold. I mean, that took some serious guts, right?
Yeah.
Like, I see where you're going with the no ego thing, but I feel like there's definitely some healthy ambition happening here, too.
Well, right. Remember, type 3s are driven to achieve. And in her case, it wasn't about personal gain.
Yeah.
It was about what she believed was best for the church and the community as a whole.
So it's like that drive for security and well-being, but channeled outward towards something much bigger than herself.
Precisely. And if we kind of connect this back to the self-preservation 3, her need to be self-reliant really shines through here, because she couldn't just sit back and hope that someone else would fix the situation.
Yeah.
She had to take action.
The sources also talk about her service during the Black Plague and how it wasn't just about being charitable. It was about taking efficient action, managing resources, and really ensuring the well-being of those around her.
Which, if we're sticking with the Enneagram framework that aligns perfectly with the self-preservation 3's drive to create and maintain stability, not just for themselves, but for their entire community.
Right.
They're often incredibly resourceful and focused on maximizing effectiveness.
So it's like she was wired for crisis management, and her faith fueled that drive even further.
Yeah.
This dedication to action and effectiveness, would you say that shows up in other parts of her life too?
Absolutely. The sources highlight her commitment to continuous self-improvement, even in her spiritual life. She wasn't content with just going through the motions.
Right.
She was constantly striving to deepen her understanding and connect with the divine.
And then there's the fact that she wrote the Dialogue of Divine Providence, which, from what I understand, is a pretty significant theological work.
Yeah.
It's almost like that classic achiever energy, but applied to the spiritual realm.
And what's so fascinating here is that even with these profound mystical experiences and accomplishments, Catherine remained grounded in humility. She wasn't seeking praise or recognition for her insights.
Right.
She used them to inspire others and call them to action, which again speaks to that core motivation of the self-preservation 3.
So she wasn't just talking the talk, she was walking the walk, living out her faith through concrete actions and service. It really makes you wonder, like, could that achiever drive actually be a force for good in any area of life, not just in business or politics?
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
And it's one that I think we'll continue to explore as we dive deeper into Catherine's life and work.
This is getting really thought-provoking.
Yeah.
I think we've seen how the Enneagram can help us understand Catherine's motivations and accomplishments, but it also seems to challenge some common assumptions about ambition and success. It's
Yeah.
not always about what you achieve, but why you're driven to achieve it in the first place.
Exactly. And as we move forward, I think it's important to keep that in mind,
Hmm.
that we're not just looking at Catherine's actions, but also the underlying motivations that shaped her extraordinary life.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of like a historical onion or something. And instead of tears, we're finding like these fascinating insights into human nature.
That's a great analogy. And
Yeah.
speaking of layers, one thing that really struck me in the source material was the emphasis on Catherine's communication style.
Oh, okay.
She was known for being very direct,
Mm-hmm.
persuasive, even a bit confrontational at times, when it came to advocating for what she believed in.
That's interesting because I feel like we often associate type threes with being more charismatic and adaptable, almost like chameleons who can kind of blend into any social situation.
Mm-hmm.
But Catherine seems like she was more of a straight shooter.
Absolutely. And this ties back to that self-preservation instinct.
Yeah.
Remember, they're not driven by a need to please everyone or, win popularity contests. Their focus is on effectiveness and achieving their goals.
Right.
So if that means, ruffling a few feathers along the way, they're not afraid to do it.
So it's less about being smooth and charming and more about just cutting through the BS to get things done.
Exactly.
Like if you had a problem, you wouldn't hesitate to go straight to the top, even if it meant like confronting, the CEO of a major company or something.
Exactly. And the sources even point out that Catherine's writings often had this very powerful, almost prophetic tone.
Uh-huh.
She wasn't afraid to speak truth to power, even when it was risky or unpopular.
Right.
And this kind of reminds us that, achieving goals, especially really ambitious ones like reforming the church, requires a certain level of boldness and directness.
It's like that saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease or something.
Yeah.
But in Catherine's case, it was more like the determined voice gets the change.
I love that. And it makes you wonder, if she were alive today, what kind of impact would she have? Would she be leading social movements? Would she be running for office? Would she be heading up a global nonprofit?
It's fun to imagine her in those roles, just fearlessly pushing for change and challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
But even beyond her boldness, the sources also emphasize her deep compassion, especially for those who were suffering.
Yes, and this is where we see that beautiful interplay between the Type 3's drive for effectiveness
Mm-hmm.
and their genuine desire to, make a positive impact on the world.
Right.
Catherine wasn't just interested in ticking boxes or achieving goals for the sake of it. She truly cared about the well-being of others.
The sources mention her work with the sick and the poor, particularly during the Black Plague,
Right.
and how it wasn't just about providing charity, it was about ensuring that people's basic needs were met in a practical, efficient way.
That's right. And it highlights another key aspect of the self-preservation 3, their focus on resource management.
Yeah.
They have this innate ability to assess situations, identify needs, and figure out how to, maximize resources to create the greatest good.
So it's like they have this built-in radar for spotting inefficiencies and finding practical solutions.
Yeah.
They're not just dreamers, they're doers who get things done in a really tangible way.
Exactly. And in Catherine's case, this practicality was deeply intertwined with her spirituality.
Uh-huh.
She saw service to others as a direct expression of her faith, not just as a religious duty.
Which brings us back to this idea of achiever energy as a force for good.
Yeah.
It's not about ego or personal gain. It's about channeling that drive into something meaningful, something
Right.
that makes a real difference in the world.
Absolutely. And Catherine's life serves as a powerful example of how, ambition, when grounded in compassion and a genuine desire to serve, can truly transform lives.
It's inspiring to think about, especially in a world where ambition is often associated with cutthroat competition and self-promotion.
Yeah.
Catherine reminds us that it can be a force for positive change, even in the most challenging of circumstances.
And it's not just about, grand gestures or world-changing actions.
Right.
Even small acts of service, when driven by a genuine desire to help others, can have a ripple effect.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world or something.
Yes.
But Catherine took it a step further.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't just being the change, she was actively creating it through her words, her actions, and her unwavering commitment to service.
That's beautifully put, and it highlights something that we haven't explicitly addressed yet.
Okay.
Catherine's legacy. Even centuries later, her life and work continue to inspire people across cultures and faiths.
It makes you wonder, what is it about her story that resonates so deeply with people, even today? Is it her courage? Is it her compassion? Is it her unwavering faith?
I think it's a combination of all those things. But there's also something incredibly relatable about her struggles and her triumphs.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't this perfect saint who effortlessly glided through life.
Right.
She faced adversity, she made mistakes, she experienced doubt.
Uh-huh.
But she never gave up on her mission or her belief in a better world.
And maybe that's the most inspiring part of her story.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in the face of challenges, even when we feel lost or uncertain, we all have the potential to make a positive impact on the world.
Absolutely. Catherine's life is a testament to the power of human resilience, compassion, and that unwavering belief in something greater than ourselves. It's a message that transcends time, culture, and even personality types.
Wow. It really is amazing to think about, the lasting impact that one person can have even centuries later. Makes you wonder, like, if we were to analyze some of today's leaders and change makers through the lens of the Enneagram, what would we discover?
That's a fascinating thought. Imagine looking at someone like, say, Malala Yousafzai, who fearlessly advocates for education and women's rights, or someone like Elon Musk with his relentless drive to push the boundaries of technology and space exploration.
Oh, yeah. I'm already picturing the headlines. Elon Musk, a visionary type 8.
Right.
Malala Yousafzai, a fearless type 1. It makes you want to grab your Enneagram book and start analyzing everyone.
Well, maybe hold off on psychoanalyzing your friends and family just yet. But I do think there's something really powerful about understanding the motivations and driving forces behind people's actions. Whether they're historical figures like Catherine or modern-day leaders.
It really is like having a secret decoder ring for human behavior.
Yeah.
And it can help us see beyond the surface, beyond the labels and stereotypes, and really appreciate the unique gifts that each personality type brings to the table.
Exactly, because it's not about putting people in boxes or saying one type is better than another.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that diversity of personalities is what makes the world such a vibrant and interesting place.
And speaking of recognizing strengths, one thing that really struck me about Catherine was her ability to use her ambition, not just for personal gain, but for the betterment of others.
Yeah.
It really challenges this notion that ambition is inherently selfish or ego-driven.
That's a really important point. Catherine's life reminds us that ambition, when channeled effectively and ethically, can be a powerful force for good. It's not about climbing over others to reach the top. It's about using your drive and determination to make a positive impact on the world.
Yeah, and it's not just about grand gestures or like saving the world or anything. It can be as simple as being a reliable coworker or a supportive friend or a parent who's dedicated to raising kind and compassionate children.
Exactly. It's about finding those small, everyday ways to make a difference, to use your unique talents and strengths to contribute to something larger than yourself. And that, I think, is the true legacy of St. Catherine of Siena.
Well said. This deep dive has been a fascinating journey, hasn't it? We've explored history, psychology, and even touched on spirituality a little bit. But most importantly, I think we've uncovered some really valuable insights into human nature and the power of individual action.
I couldn't agree more, and we hope that you, our listener, have found it just as insightful and thought-provoking. If you're curious to learn more about the Enneagram and how it can help you understand yourself and others better, we encourage you to explore some of the resources that we've mentioned in the show notes.
And even if the Enneagram isn't your thing, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to think about the unique gifts that you bring to the world and how you can use them to make a positive impact no matter how big or small.
Because as Catherine's life so beautifully demonstrates, each of us has the potential to create change, to inspire others, and to leave the world a little brighter than we found it.
So until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep seeking those nuggets of wisdom that make life so fascinating.
And remember, there's always more to discover, both within ourselves and in the world around us.